Every day, millions of comments are painstakingly rendered and lovingly attached to videos, only to be ignored, forgotten, and then buried under the digital regolith of the never ending onslaught of electronic miasma that covers them up. Miasma? Miasma? But that's why, like a good archaeologist, I'm uncovering those hidden gems and seeing what the value is in them, putting them in a historical context for a better understanding of where our species has been and where we are and where we're going. That's why we're all the way up to part 31 of finally replying to old comments. And where we left off was the comment section to his master plan revealed, part 11, almost to the end of this one. And a comment from Dream Crazy 38, who said, I don't think NK knew or helped in this. I believe she pushed him to hurry up and get out of there, even setting him up apartment viewings. Shanann was back for good and there was no playing with both of them, and he was too gutless to leave Shanann. He also had a huge hickey on his neck. He didn't want to be seen as the bad guy leaving his pregnant wife and kids. By trying to make Shanann miscarry with the oxy, if he was successful, he would have used that as an excuse to leave, saying it, quote, broke him, etc. Well, I think you were more closer to the truth with the beginning of this comment, that he had to appear like the good guy. And I think he did have a good understanding of what makes a good husband and father and what makes a bad human being, based on how he portrayed himself and what he tried to keep hidden. When he was talking to police and friends and family, he didn't know how to present it, but you can see what he's going for is he knows exactly what a good person is and what a bad person is. And I think he would have known that a miscarriage would not be a good enough excuse to leave his grieving wife and kids just because it broke him. I mean, his ego was high enough that he would probably think he'd get sympathy, but I think even his underdeveloped brain would see that as being like an abandoner, a deadbeat dad. You're leaving your wife and kids at their most vulnerable time after you just lost a new member of the family. So I don't think that would have been. I don't think that was ever on the table. I mean, there are definitely people who would do that. The I was going to say men, but men and women and they would secretly cause a miscarriage and then pretend that that was the reason that they have to get out of the relationship, because that's easier for them to do than simply breaking up face to face, human to human, with the actual reasons, confronting your partner with the actual reasons why it's not going to work. That takes guts and intelligence, and some people are too stupid and too cowardly to be able to handle that, so they would stoop to the level of causing a miscarriage and then saying that's the reason that really they can't be in the relationship anymore. I just don't see that as the guy we're talking about. He doesn't strike me as someone who would think he wouldn't want to be perceived that way. But anyway, continuing on with your statement, you're saying the attempt to make her miscarry with the oxy didn't work, so the sicko went to the extreme. I don't think the girls were planned until a few days prior. He knew their measurements perfectly to the crown. Yeah, I think I've replied to this on another comment, but I'll just say it again here. I think even if he succeeded, he still would have gone through with murdering the rest of his family. I think the attempt with the oxy was just a test run to see if anyone was paying attention, to test his own sneakiness. And it was also a way to keep the me and the mistress are going to have our first son together fantasy going, because the mistress was pretending to somehow not know that Chris's wife was pregnant, even though it was all over social media. And even back in 2018, that was the first, to quote Dr. Phil, the first thing you do is you go and check out someone's social media when you meet them. So she would have known, but they were both playing this fantasy that they didn't know Shanann was pregnant. So the attempt to cause the miscarriage was to see what he can get away with and to test everyone's reactions. And the fact that nobody called him out on it or suspected him, even though I kind of think Shanann did suspect that he made her, he drugged her because she was doing things like changing her password on her phone and telling her friends when Chris wasn't around that she was worried to be around him. So I think she did kind of suspect, but from Chris's point of view, he thought that no one was the wiser, no one caught on to what he did, his attempt to make her miscarry. So that just emboldened him to go ahead and murder the rest of them. And yeah, that was a creepy phone call. That's where I heard it, at least. When the police officer called him up in the middle of the night and he answered with this tone to his voice, like the cat who swallowed the canary. Like where you can, cat who swallowed the canary, is that a phrase? Or is it cat who swallowed the rat? You can see the tail sticking out of their mouth while they're smiling. No offense, kitty. But it's the thing, like the tone of his voice sounds like Duper's Delight as he's saying the measurements of his two kids that, yeah, he knows immediately. He somehow knows their measurements of their, down to the centimeter, as you said. Yeah, it's been years since I've seen that clip now, but it's if he was prepared for that. But that kind of contradicts what I've said before, that the tanks were a last minute, last resort because he thought the grave was too shallow. But I guess he could still know because he was a very detail oriented person. So I can see him knowing their measurements just for other reasons, not related to putting them in the tanks at all. So thanks for those comments, Dream Crazy. Up next, I'm shadow banned by Google. Andy said, I don't think Nicole K knew he was going to kill his family, so I agree with you on that and pretty much everything else you've said. I hope you do a video about what a psychopath his dad and especially his mom are. Well, if you stayed with it, I didn't do an entire video, but I did cover some of the things that make them unusual as parents and grandparents, and how a brain like Chris's would have developed under the care of these parents. So when we get to those comment sections later on, I wonder what you're going to have to say about them. Continuing on with this one, though, love your videos. I was late with the Watts case, and like you, now I need to relate to others about it, but most have already moved on. And that comment was 4 years ago, and everyone had already moved on then, and now here I am with 30 plus more videos on the comments to that case, because that's most of the comments that this channel has gotten that I haven't replied to. Most of the other videos that I did were not related to this case. They only had a few comments, so it was easy to reply to them. But most of the ones I haven't replied to were on this case. And people were already moving on back then, because there's no end to the horror show in this crazy world. So as soon as they got their fill of this case, they moved on to the next one and the next one. So thanks for that comment. I'm Shadowman by Google Andy. Up next, a couple more. Rosemary Kennedy said, I liked the image of Nicole watering Chris's murder seeds. Yeah, the seeds were already planted for him to murder his wife and kids, is what Rosemary Kennedy is referring to there. And the mistress coming into his life didn't change him. It didn't make him do it. She didn't coerce him into doing it. The seeds were already planted, and the mistress simply watered those seeds. Up next, The reason I said that way is because the next comment is from Night of Your Life, always there for you. Night of your life, 1 + 1 is 2. It's been like 15 videos since I did that. The Night of Your Life sounds like an 80s love song. Well, anyway, Night of Your Life finishes up this comment section by saying, I agree with everything you have said. And it's a simple comment, but I appreciate you sharing it. And I wonder what point, Night of Your Life, if you are still listening, and it's, like I said, it's been 4 years now, at what point did you finally disagree with something I said? Because as great as it is to agree to listen to someone speaking publicly and they are saying everything that you would say if you had the platform, you do have to have a kind of meeting of the minds where two people might disagree on something, and by sharing their disagreement in a civil way, they both reach a greater understanding of the topic. And it's impossible that you completely agreed with everything forever that I've said. So at some point, this was part 11 of the series, His Master Plan Revealed. And up to that point, like that's 3 hours of narrative telling the story of the crime, and you agreed with everything I said. So where you were leaving comments all the way up until maybe part 10 to 15 in this series, finally replying to old comments. So there had to be some point in there where you disagreed. And if you remember it, I would like to hear when that was. Well, maybe we'll come to it in the comment sections. But if you do remember it and it was a reason worth sharing, I'm interested. Okay, we're moving on to the comment section of part 12 now of His Master Plan Revealed. Got plenty of time. Anaz575 said, Love you, Michael. You do not love Michael. You don't know Michael. If you have any kind of love for Michael, it's for a person you are seeing a very tiny slice of, not the complete person. If you're just saying it banally, like, I love these videos. I love you, Michael, for making them. Sure. Or you're just lying to get me to respond, going overboard in your attempts. But if it is just a lie, if it is just getting caught up in the moment of enjoying somebody's video, I would much prefer the I love you lie to the you suck lie. When someone tells that lie, saying you suck, you're terrible, you should stop, that's not as enjoyable of a lie to come across. That can ruin your whole day. The I love you lie in a comment, that just that kind of makes you a little uncomfortable. Love me? You don't even know me. You don't even know if I'm a real person. But I do appreciate the comment, as always. Well, I shouldn't say as always, because some of the comments are not appreciated. Okay, one more from Anaz575. Hi, Michael. I do love it when you acknowledge my comment. It makes me so happy because I take a lot of pleasure watching your videos. They are all so well presented. Okay, that's a little bit more reasonable of a way to flesh out the love you, Michael comment. I guess I'll ask you the same question that I just asked Night of Your Life. I haven't seen any of your comments in years. When did you stop loving the videos? I'm legitimately curious. Okay, and up next was a comment from Beatrice Vandermotor. How you explain this case is amazing. Thanks you for that. And then on what I believe is a German flag, but I replied to that one already. Up next, speaking of flags from around the world, there was a comment from Amanda Buchan, who said, going to watch all the parts again and explain everything. Sorry, going to watch all the parts again. You explain everything so well. Great job. Thumbs up and the flag. I hope both of you commenters, Beatrice and Amanda from other countries, I hope your countries still have a higher number of intelligent people than morons, and that you are in a stable society overall. Not every country is like that. And as a species that's spread around the globe, overall, we need to have everyone. We need there to be enough intelligent people to kind of water down the morons so that we can continue building that next rung on the ladder to keep going up to where we can hopefully evolve to the point where we can survive the death of our sun, and maybe even one day, uncountable numbers of millennia in the future, survive the death of the universe. Wouldn't that be something? Look how far we've come from leaving Africa 300,000 years ago, barely even not monkeys anymore, to being all around the world and having instant connections to each other. We've come that far in just a few thousand years. How much further can we go as long as the intelligent people continue to outnumber the morons? Because the morons want to take those rungs on the ladder away and keep us down. It's selfishness. To continue building those rungs on the ladder, you need people who think outside themselves and who think of times other than the present. So I hope both of your countries and all the countries of the people who watch this channel, and not just them, you know what? I hope all countries all around the world, even the ones who seemingly, based on media reports, have more morons, I hope in reality, much like this channel is not the perfect representation of me, I hope media is not a perfect representation of humans all over the world, and that they are much better than what the media shows. There. That's good enough. Moving on. Pam's Birding said, you said something I have always believed. If Nikki was involved, he would have thrown her under the bus in a flat second. No way he would go to prison and allowed her to go on her merry way. By the way, your impression of Chris's dad is spot on. Laughing face emoji. I can see either way. I'm inclined to agree that he would have mentioned she was involved if she had, because he kind of hints, if she had, other than just vaguely implying it's what she wanted him to do, was murder his wife and kids. If she had a single iota of energy involved in actually committing the crimes, I think he would have mentioned it, because he tries so subtly and frequently to suggest something was wrong with her, with all the references to her dark friends, her personality disorder, her demand of him to delete all of their text messages. And he didn't, by the way. He didn't delete them when she told him to. She deleted hers, but he didn't delete his. So that could be he didn't want to let her go yet because he was still in lust with her. Or it could also be that he was hoping that she would be included somehow. Like if he was going to go down, she was going to go down too. Because he said that at some point. I think it was in the prison interview. Yeah, I couldn't delete him yet, so I'm sure it made it easier for you guys. He knew. Moving on. Shauna Deo. Chris Watts has the, quote, nice guy syndrome, unquote. Look it up, LOL. He got supply out of being the quote unquote nice guy his whole life. Yep. Well, he was sick of being the wimp who couldn't stand up to anyone, so he blamed everything on his wife and daughters. Well, you got this guy's number. I can see everything that Chris was ever mad at his entire life coming out that morning of August 13th. Me too. He must have been a scary sight to see that morning. Thank you for telling us what Chris Watts is actually thinking. I don't see anyone else explain him the way you do. It's amazing. Wow, Sean Adeo, amazing. You know what? I'll take that as absolute 100% fact. Anything but modest. But yeah, I meant when Chris was describing his strangling of Shanann, he he said something like, "I don't even want to know what she saw when she looked back at me." Implying that he realizes he was a scary sight, as you've said. Other words, other words, other wands. I don't have anything else to add to that. Because much like the Night of Your Life comment, I agreed with everything you said. Maybe that's why you enjoyed these videos, validation for your opinion. Okay, up next, Belle Figura said, that is the best analysis of the mistress being involved or not part. Kudos and thanks a lot. Back at you, Belle Figura. Next, 38 Maddie said, people that think NK was involved don't think CW was a narcissist. Interesting point. So they don't think he would throw her under the bus. Another reason is because they don't want to think that one person can kill his whole family without help. True. I've noticed, I get the impression that a lot of those people in the category you just mentioned, they also are relating it a little too closely to probably personal experiences. So it reminds them of someone they know or heard about, and they think, well, it must have been the same way. So that's what's great about comparing these comments, is that everyone takes the same facts and the same information and it goes into their brain and it gets changed just a little bit based on their experiences and education. That's why it's so valuable that we compare notes this way. Like, I know this is a case, like, as was stated earlier, everyone has already moved on. But we're covering topics here that relate to many people. I mean, this isn't the last person that did it or will do it. And it's this disorder, this mental disorder that led to the crime mentioned in all these comments, will lead with other people to different crimes, not just family annihilation. So it's valuable to learn about these mental disorders and the different kind of trains of thought your own mind might go down, and by proxy someone else's mind might go down to change that track. What's that thing called where you turn the lever and the track changes over? That's what we got to do by learning about, even though the crime isn't popular in mainstream media anymore, you can still learn from it. For all you people who've been saying great commentaries, if you really enjoy them, check out my video called The Timeless Value of Dated Science, which says it all in that title. Even though the science is outdated, we've already built upon it, it's no longer relevant, we still get value from reading about it, learning about the old science, what people did in the past and how it compares to today. It's the same with true crime, learning about old crimes, what was going through people's minds in certain societies with different availabilities to them. how did they behave and how will they behave with the newer toys that are available? AI. Okay, so moving on, Ashley Shelton said, "This one hit hard," and then there's a heartbreak emoji. Well, I'm sorry about that, Ashley Shelton. I did debate whether or not I should even keep covering it back. If you remember back in part 4 of his master plan reveal, I almost just quit right there because I was wondering if I should even bother talking about this stuff. I was like, does anyone want to hear these horrific details? And I stuck with it, so for the same reason, for all the reasons I just mentioned about the value. Okay, one more from Ashley Shelton. "I'm really impressed with this series. I've watched almost damn near every single thing about this case that's on YouTube, with the exception of several channels after I watched a video or two and figured out I do not want to be a part of what they are selling. Victim bashing and conspiracy theories. Yes, aren't they disgusting? I mean, there are rare cases where victims deserve to be bashed and conspiracy theories turned out to be proven theories. Not in this case, though. So when people willy-nilly do it with, they have access to all the evidence that you saw, which makes you think the victims are deserving of having their story told, and people are just bashing them and making up wild things just to get attention and bump up their numbers. It's disgusting. Continuing on with this comment, "I appreciate the respect you show the victims, and I have thoroughly been intrigued by every word of yours. I really appreciate all your hard work. Keep them coming. Shine like Shanann, brave like Bella, courageous like Cece, noble like Nico. Rest in peace. P.S. I enjoy your impressions as well. Also, you look good with a beard." Looking at this video here. Yep, I'm a little more gray now than I was then. Thanks for the comments, Ashley Shelton. I went through the same experience of getting frustrated by other people's coverage of it. Part of the inspiration for wanting to do my own series. Okay, up next, Lee McGrish, who said, "Just waiting patiently for episode 13. Boy, that's one of those bittersweet comments. Because I was nearing the end of the series at that point, and on the one hand, it's, wow, I got lightning in the bottle here. People are excited for the next installment of what I'm currently doing. But when the series ends, what reason are they going to have to stick around for the next project I move on to? I'm not going to just keep going on and doing more true crime. And even if I do, there's no guarantee they're going to follow me. There's distraction is one of the number one epidemics right now in the world. Distracted minds. So it's only a matter of time. 1 second, something else. I'm not talking about you personally, Lee McGrish. I appreciate you sticking with the whole series and leaving comments to support it. And I completely understand, as I have been that audience member to other channels. They stopped doing something I liked, or I just got tired of their shtick, and I moved on too. No, it's not time for a break. I'm still doing this. Well, actually, I'm almost to the end. Okay. I guess we'll have to make this the last one. Hero Forever said, "I have to admit that I'm not a big fan of Tammy Lee, but let me explain. Tammy elected to use the missing pregnant victim by blaming her in order to get him to talk. However, in the case of such as this, the number one suspects are always the spouse and the affair partner. I'm talking 100% of the time. Per every other Leo I've heard comment and based also on logic. Conversely, if she had used the mistress, I personally see that being so much more successful based on his weird obsession and or NK bizarre brainwashing she did of him. Furthermore, to this day, a group of backward-thinking Shanann haters, too, blaming her and running with it and never ceased. Had Tammy gone the other and more logical route, I really feel most of the SW hate would never have escalated. You know, Tammy herself, in a lot of interviews, I feel like that's why she did them. She had to set the record straight on her feelings that Shanann was a good mom. You could see her almost immediately after Chris confessed his guilt to murdering her, that Tammy did the not the Uno reverse card. She just did a 180 and started saying, "Yeah, she was a good mom. A lot of people see she was a good mom. It's hard for me to believe she really did this. Are you sure about it?" You know, taking back everything she just said to get Chris to confess. So the bottom line is what she did was successful, as I think you'll agree. And it is sad that people ran with it. I got to believe there would have been victim bashing anyway, but because the people who are victim bashing, they're making up their mind before they have all the facts. They want to victim bash, so they did get their reason, but I think they're like contrarians. They want to do something that's going to cause harm to people who don't deserve it. That's what victim bashers mostly do, except for the exception that I mentioned earlier. But thanks for the comment, Hero Forever, and we have a new record length video, so we're gonna have to call it there. See you in part 32.